All right. Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the West African Transitional Justice Center, I'd love to welcome you to this month's edition of our Author Spotlight event. This is one of the flagship programs of the center where we try to bring in some practitioners and scholars in the field of transitional justice and social justice in general to come and discuss outputs of their work so that people get to know about the content of what they've written and also share their ideas on how to further improve the field. And so today we are privileged to have join us the author of a book series which she calls the Role Model Series for African Children, Miss Edem Ossai, Mrs. Edem Ossai, sorry. So the importance of this work to our own field is in the proactive nature of trying to design a template for African children in order to serve as a deterrence measure, basically from embracing crime or crimes and all other forms of delinquencies in the continent or across the world today. So in trying to share the lives of those that we can allude to as being successful in our own era or in eras gone by, I think these texts or these books find their value in trying to create a vision for African children to pursue, when it comes to looking at charting proactive approach to conflict management and peace building. Without further ado, we'd like to welcome the author, Mrs. Edem Ossai. We also have join us Miss Chimamanda Ossai. I know we're eager to listen to what she has to tell us today. And also Miss Kautha, sorry, but I think it's Kautha Omisori. But I'm open to your correction as the event continues. So the event is structured in such a way that we'll have the author speak about the content of our work and its relevance to the world today and what we do. And we also have the contribution, or we have two contributions from two of our discussants. So I would like to hand over the platform to the author, Mrs. Edem Ossai. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Olayoku, and good afternoon to all the participants. Thank you very much for making time out to join us today. I know it's a work hour, so I appreciate the sacrifice. I, of course, have to mention how very glad I am to be sharing this space with my daughter and, of course, a mentee of mine, Kauta. So thank you again for the opportunity. So the Role Model series for African children is a storybook series that I launched early this year with the first volume. It's a 5-in-1 collection. And the purpose of this book is to exhume and present to our children in a digestible and pleasant reading format stories of incredible icons, people who have, done incredible things to advance the country, to advance the world. And oftentimes their stories are not presented for children's enjoyment. So we miss out on the many benefits that these stories have in shaping our children and in shaping our narratives about ourselves, our identities, and our contributions to civilization. I'll start by sharing the sort of epiphany moment that sparked or sort of like became my compelling motivation to put this collection together. I had actually wanted to do this way earlier, 12 years ago. And I remember even sharing this with Dr. Olayoku. And I remember at that time, I also collected the first manuscript by interviewing Professor Bolanle Awe herself. At the time, it was just, I was thinking that, look, children need to have in front of them these raw examples. Mainstream media often hides the incredible contributions of Africans, both men and women, across a vast spectrum of disciplines and fields. And so I felt that, look, through creative nonfiction, this was one way to address that gap. So I had shared that idea and wanted to do it, but I just, shelved it. And for many years, the idea was incubating. Fast forward to 12 years or about 11 years later, I held a summer school program. My organization held a summer school program for children in elementary school in Ibadan. And I recall that I was handling the public speaking class. And so that day I said to them, oh, we're going to focus on, the late Chief Bola Ige. And that, I want them to do a presentation and come and, to do research and come and make a presentation the next day, the next class, about the life and contributions of this great Sage. And I saw the blank stares. They were all looking at me completely,
Sorry, Edem, I think you are breaking. If you can put off your video so that I can hear you better.
Okay, is it slightly better?
Yeah, it's a lot better.
Okay. So they were all staring at me. Anyway, so let me recap a little bit. I said that I ran a summer school program for children in elementary school in Ibadan, elementary and high school. And in that session, it was devoted to public speaking. And in that session, we identified late Chief Bola Ige. And I said to them to do research and come and make a presentation the next day about the life and incredible contributions that this man had made to Nigeria and to Africa, especially our democracy. And they were staring at me blankly. So I realized, hey, these children have not heard, of this man. I said, okay, then a perfect opportunity to correct that, deficit. That evening, as they were going home, I heard one of the girls speaking to her grandfather. She said, oh, granddaddy, they said we should do a presentation on some of Nigeria's, popular great leaders. So he said to her, is there a particular person, they've given to you, or do you get to pick? Then she responded, some Bola guy. I cringed inside me, some Bola guy. He said, hey, which Bola guy? Then she was describing, he said, hey, he used to be former minister of, justice. He was a one-time governor of Oyo State. It turned out that her grandfather was an old boy of Government College in Ibadan. So as she was giving all these, characteristics, the man clued in instantly that she must be referring to late Chief Bola Ige. He just, I heard his gasp, his instant gasp, and then he shouted, young girl, is it late Chief Bola Ige that you're referring to as some Bola guy? So, of course, that for me was the moment that, I realized we have done a huge disservice to our younger generations. I mean, as appalling and as alarming as her, casual dismissal of his, this great man sounded, it wasn't her fault. It just meant that through all the cultural and educational institutions, we had missed the transfer. We weren't transferring our stories, and there was no continuity. We were missing out on transferring, these great narratives that help these young people in a very globalized world to hold their heads up in any global chat room. And so we weren't arming them with sufficient information. So I just said to myself, look, no more dilly-dallying, put this book together. And that was how I set about, putting together the first 5 manuscripts. And again, the mission of this book is to, like I said, share with our Nigerian children and younger generations the strides, the great contributions of incredible individuals who have come before us, who have, demonstrated great courage, great sacrifice and great service to build the nation, to build its different, sectors, its vast, different fields. They've moved civilization and advancement forward. And also critically at this moment, where we're faced with, a serious decline in our moral values and a sort of like, a celebration and over prioritization of, wealth and fame as single denominators of success, I felt it very critical to bring out, textualized stories from childhood of people whose significance came about not because of money alone, or because of, some political appointment, which is how we've come to reduce success to, but because of real character-based, value-based contributions that they have made. So that, in essence, is the, the mission behind this new introduction to creative nonfiction and storybook for children.
Thank you, Mrs. Ossai. Do you want to share perhaps some part of the content of this creative nonfiction for us? The personalities, your reasoning behind choosing these personalities, and what to look out for, when reading some of these things. Yeah.
Yes. So the first volume focuses on 5 central characters in the lives of Professor Wole Soyinka, one, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, Professor Bolanle Awe, Kanu Nwankwo, and also Chief Adebayo Ogunlesi. Now, I chose these individuals as, the maiden characters, or the characters to launch the maiden edition, with, for several important reasons. One, I wanted figures that are contemporary enough for children to relate to. Oftentimes, we've had a tendency in Nigeria's history to, fossilize important people and sort of like, fixate on a single era, which is either our immediate post-independence era, when it comes to, so a lot of our, icons derive from our political history and our, transitions from colonialism into national independence, into our early nascent democracy. So what that means, therefore, is in popular narrative, a lot of the figures that we've put before children happen to be individuals who played critical roles or some pivotal roles in these major transitions in our political evolution. We've ignored all other aspects of our expression as a race and as a people. We've not delved into our science. We've not delved into our, music. We've not delved into our entertainment. We've not delved into our mathematics. We've not delved into our, all the various aspects, our industry, our inventions, to present all these other strands of people who were defining our economy, our markets, our progress to children. So there's this tendency we have to fixate, which is, important because of how important, our governance is to our existence. It's perhaps a natural pitfall, but I want to correct that by, expanding the scope of this, expression of Nigeria to cover all these other important sides of endeavors, human endeavors. That's number one. Again, we've oftentimes, and still happening in our classrooms, a lot of, like I said, a lot of the figures that we celebrate are stuck in an era. So I wanted more contemporary figures to show that there is an expectation on children to also lend their contributions, that, civilizations thrive on intergenerational continuum. So what others did are supposed to serve as, a starting point and, a continuing, it's sort of like a relay. And so we have, a responsibility to also hold ourselves to high enough standards such that we too can, match those contributions, exceed them, and again, advance ourselves further. So if we only keep repeating stories, then we cancel out that expectation. We cancel out that message. We don't give children the understanding that it is expected in the civilization of a people for every generation to learn to make its own contribution. So I wanted to challenge that by dealing with more contemporary individuals who they've recently heard about in the news, or, they perhaps even may have seen at some point in time. So all of the figures, the stories, the people, characters in this volume are still alive. Another more personal reason is the common ties that all 5 individuals have to Ibadan. And Ibadan, for me, was a sort of like an anchor, a sort of node star or northern star in this story, because Ibadan represents, even in our nomenclature, our moniker is, your state is the pace setter state. So Ibadan represents in the history of Nigeria, the beginning of many, great, many great expressions of as a nation, from our educational, institutions, the first university, all the way to our knowledge economy. A lot of, great contributions in knowledge came out of Magazine Road and all the publishing, the great publishing hallmarks of publishing was birthed in Ibadan. Even in our architecture, Ibadan presented many firsts by, floating the first ever glass structure and multi-story building across West Africa, still standing tall today. So speaking about sustainability. So all of these individuals whose lives demonstrate great virtues in whether it's in sacrifice, patriotism, courage, and other elements of that are have didactic importance for children. All of these individuals share commonalities with the city, which was one of the reasons why I focused my lens on them. The only individual who I felt was an outlier, and I've shared this before, was Kanu Nwankwo. But in unraveling his story, I even discovered that he has such a close tie to the city. His wife, Amara, was born and raised in the city of Ibadan, and for many years, was a congregant in All Saints Church here in Jericho, Ibadan. Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala began her secondary school education in St. Anne's, Molete, Ibadan. Professor Bolanle Awe's story cannot be told without her Okeado days, and of course, being the first female lecturer in the University of Ibadan. Professor Wale Soyinka cut his teeth in, activism and began to interrogate social issues and social, rules and norms as a student in the University of Ibadan before he went on to England. Chief Adebayo Ogunlesi, his father is the first ever professor of medicine in Nigeria, attended Abadina Primary School. So all of them, have drank out of the waters of, this great city, whose fountains have birthed many great things in the history of the country.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Ossai, for your very wonderful and succinct presentation of the text and the reason behind the choice of individuals. I'm particularly fascinated by the geography of choice. Ibadan being, like you said, a pace setter when it comes to the educational context of Nigeria, and also that these individuals are contemporary enough for young people to feel them as real humans, that they can actually study their lives and try to also develop their own template of living right and making impacts within their communities. Miss Chimamanda, I must say that we cannot wait to listen to you, but if you permit me, let me allow Kota Miss Omishore to go first. Then we'll have you, help us wrap it up, if that's okay. So, Ms. Omishore, you have the platform.
Thank you so much, Mr. Philip. Good day, everyone. It's such an honor to be here today to explore the role model series for African children with everyone on this call. So, talking about the book, I think for me, when we talk about books for children, we are really talking about the first teachers that many young children would ever meet before they even get or tend to experience the 4 walls of school, which is why the books we introduce to children, it matters a great deal. Because when children are raised with stories that emphasize moral lessons, like such that exemplified in the role model series for African children, when they are raised with stories that emphasize fairness, integrity, respect for fellow human beings, and responsible citizenship. It goes a long way in helping them develop their emotional and social skills, which is needed for them, especially needed for them to thrive anywhere they find themselves. And I think those are some of the major lessons that I was able to glean from reading the Role Model African series. I remember when Bolanle the Pioneer, while I was reading her story, when she was being interviewed by the lady professor at Somerville College while she was about to pursue her postgraduate degree, and she made known an interest to focus on history, and she was basically told, and if you permit me, I would like to read that particular part of the story from the book. So Bolanle
Yes,
was,
please.
all right, thank you. So Bolanle Abe was trying to pursue her postgraduate degree at Somerville University, and she was being interviewed by the history don of the college. And when she made known her interest to delve into African history, and I read, therefore, when asked, Bolanle immediately answered that she intended to focus on African history for her postgraduate work. It came as a huge surprise to Bolanle when, following her answer, a professor responded that there was no such thing as African history. According to the lady professor, Africa had no history, and the closest thing to the notion of African history was colonial history. Bolanle was immediately taken aback. Beyond reading several books on African history, Bolanle had also heard various accounts of different aspects of Yoruba culture from family members and various teachers during her childhood. Because of that, Bolanle was absolutely convinced that Africa had a history. Despite her professor's insistent view, Bolanle remained adamant that Africa had a history, and that was what she wished to study. I mean, it's still the story goes further than that. But if there was anything I gleaned from this particular part of Bolanle Awe's story, it was the fact that after the professor insisted that there was no such thing as African history, she went ahead to decline and insisted that that was what she wanted. And we all know, especially as a Nigerian, I mean, yes, she schooled over there after she left St. Anne's and all that. But I mean, I would want to imagine a Nigerian who has been really struggling, because we all know, maybe most of us, we know the struggle that goes into having to secure a fully funded scholarship abroad to study. So now imagine that you've even gotten to that point where you are being interviewed by the history don of the university or the college you're interested in, and then they're telling you that there's no such thing as African history. There is the possibility that some people probably go ahead and say, okay, maybe I would choose to study another field or another interest, another study entirely. But she knew what she wanted. She was self-grounded, and she went ahead and declared. And I think to a great extent, it was what informed her to be called by the university back that, okay, we think that we want to give you that chance, of which she went ahead, explored, and became the first professor of history. So these are stories about being self-grounded in yourself, knowing what you really want, and of which I totally believe, I strongly believe that they are really important in developing ourselves, and not just even ourselves, in also relating to how we see things generally as individuals. Talking about the story of Adebayo Jiguru also, I remember the dot-com bubble era saga, how it happened, and how it was one of the most challenging aspects of his life, and he was able to bounce back strongly and all that. And I think that these are some of the things that children should be able to see from book. In as much as the Role Model series for African children is a non-fictional read, I think that it encompasses so many things. It's a non-fictional read that could easily classify as a memoir, as a biography. Because for me, it was a book of many firsts. I got to discover so many things. A quick backstory, by the way. I remember when I was about to gain admission into GSS, SS class, it was more at that point where my parents had this financial issue. My older brothers, they were in OBMS, or Itamefa Baptist, and anyone who knows OBMS in Ibadan knows that it is one of the most expensive private schools. And they had two of my brothers there. And as at the time I was about to also go into SS1, SS2, SS3, the financial funds wasn't really there. So quotes to say that I became the sacrificial lamb, and I had to go to a public school. But as at that time, the decision also that what needed to be made was, if I would be going to a public school, then it has to be the best of public schools. And I remember how we started searching, and St. Anne's came to fall as one of the schools that I should apply to. And when I was reading Bolale Awe's story, I realized that St. Hans wasn't actually St. Hans initially. It was St. Marina. It was Marina, what is it called? It was Marina College. It was CMS schoolgirls, sorry, at Marina Lagos. And never in my wildest dream would I have thought that St. Hans actually started from, what is it called? It started from Lagos, then down to it coming to Ibadan. So I think what I'm trying to, the message I'm trying to pass across from all these things I've been saying as to the role model series for African children being a book of many firsts, and also being a book that isn't just spotlighting the wins of these role models that were spotlighted, because that's one thing I really noticed about the book. It wasn't just about their wins. It was about so many struggles. It was about so many things that they had to face to get to where they are now. And these are some of the things, these are some of the qualities that when a child reads and they get to understand, it positions them, or let me start with the book. It positioned the role model series for African children as this sort of preventive measure in the level of peace building. Because when a child encounters heroes who solve problems with intelligence, there are quite a number of scenarios in the book where the children were told they had to get home as early as possible, and they stuck to it. Even on days where Bolale thought that she had done really good for herself by saving money and going ahead to buy that really nice gown, it was still another backlash from her parents, in a sense that by that particular scenario, it was trying to pass across the message of, yes, you should save as a child, but at the same time, the needed consultation is important with your parents, with your guardians. And when children encounter stories like this about heroes who did not just solve problems with, who solve their problems with intelligence rather than aggression, they become adults who are able to choose negotiation easily over conflict. They see leadership that is molded through integrity, and they are less likely. I mean, the whole conversation around corruption is a different thing. But when we pass across these messages in these books, they tend to see how to navigate around the corridors of powers positively and not corruptively. And this is what I honestly believe that books should be about, to influence children positively. And that is exactly what the role model series for African children has done. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Omishoye, for your enlightening presentation on the role model series for African children. Particularly, I love the fact that you pointed out that these stories do not present African heroes, if you call, yes, heroes, as we can call them, or African role models as people that had it smooth all the way. You know, they lived like everyone else, had to face challenges, but in the face of these challenges, they were resilient. And I think that's something that is important for children of today to learn, especially where you're seeing people who are making it early on in life. I mean, some legitimately, others maybe not so legitimately. That discipline of being resilient is important in order not to miss the way, you know, and go off track. You also spoke about the vision of Professor Bolanle Awe, based on her background, to stand her ground, to say that, yeah, if you don't know anything about African history, perhaps we are here to accept that there's African history, and we are here to make it a canon in terms of the educational system in Africa. And today, we are happy that she made her mark, and we are able to drink from the wealth of knowledge that she bequeathed to us. I think finally, I also need to point out your point on parental guidance, you know, also from Professor Bolanle Awe's life, to say that at no point should children feel that they've outgrown the guidance of parents, or even elderly ones, if you look at the communal nature of child rearing or child development within the African context. Thank you very much for your wonderful presentation. Now we'll go to Ms. Chimamanda Ossai to give us our own presentation. You have the platform.
Hello, everyone. My name is Chimamanda, and I want to thank everyone for letting me perform this speech today. So the first thing I learned in the books was when I read the book of Wole Soyinka, I wondered. The book said that Wole Soyinka's sister died, Folashade, and I immediately started to wonder, how did she die? Was she sick? And it must have been so painful for her to die on her first birthday. Another thing I learned was Wole Soyinka's bravery. When he went to the TV station and tied up the reporter and he refused to give up and he told the truth. That was a lesson of bravery for me. Another part was in the book of Kano Wanko. He never gave up. Even though he had a rare sickness, he still refused to give up. That made me know that I had to be brave no matter what. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chimamanda, for sharing your wonderful lessons from this book with us. Which it's very valid. Also, from what you've been talking about, to say that people that were regarded as role models, they had their own challenges in life. The loss of a loved one is something that is enough to even derail people. Some people turn to criminality out of this. Some people never recover from it, So it's important that one is able to cope with trauma. And simple as your presentation may seem, it's very profound, in terms of its implication for the management of trauma, which is a big thing when it comes to conflict management and also even transitional justice. Is a whole lot of there are whole lots of debates on how to define trauma, how to manage trauma, and how to ensure that people are able to to cope effectively with their trauma, so that they are also able to live, meaningful lives. And we can learn this, like you've told us, from the life of Wole Soyinka, who lost his sister, on her first birthday. I've not read the work, but it's also my first time of hearing that. So thank you very much for sharing with us. You also talked about Professor Soyinka's activism in terms of his involvement in Nigerian politics and how he had to go out of his way to go to a radio station and, prevent them from announcing what he considered a fraudulent result. And this teaches us that in the face of challenges and adversities, we cannot try to be neutral or isolate ourselves. Everybody is want to complain about what's happening in the country. Everybody wants to talk about the kind of challenges that we have in Nigeria at the moment. But there are people who have devoted their lives, to ensuring that there are people who have devoted their lives to ensuring that this there are people who have devoted their lives to ensuring that we have better societies by making sacrifices as desired. The other thing that you said and you ended with was Kanu's challenge. The challenge of Kanu. Of course, all of us that follow football know that at some point in Kanu's career, he was threatened with, I think, a heart problem, which would have made him stop his career. But despite this challenge, he was able to even go on playing for a few years and even make a positive effort out of that by his Kanu Heart Foundation, where I think he performed or he sponsored some sort of medical care for children who had heart problems. So this is also a very important lesson to learn, to say that we must look for solutions in times of adversity, and beyond the solutions that we are able to garner or devise for ourselves, we should also look out for others. So it's not always about ourselves, it's also about trying to look out for others and helping them out of the challenges that they have. Thank you very much, Chimamanda, for that wonderful presentation. Now we're going to have the floor open for comments from members of this audience. So you can either signify by raising up your hand to speak if you have any comments or any questions for the author, or you can also type in the chat box. So the platform is available for our comments and contribution. Does anyone want to go first? I'm not seeing any hands up, or you would want. Okay, let me go first to ask the question. From the author. Yeah. So I would love to ask a question from. I was thinking there was a question in the chat box, but it was just an apology that someone missed Chimamanda's presentation. So I wanted to ask a question from the author to say that of these role models that you have mentioned today, I know that you've spoken about how they are being contemporary gives some kinds of realism in going through this non-fictional test that you've provided for us. But how best do you think we can navigate the intergenerational challenges that, or differences, let me not use the word challenges, not to be negative, the intergenerational differences that we may have in terms of our lived experiences today? And what I'm trying to say is that most of these people perhaps lived at their peak in the 70s, in the 60s, perhaps maybe at some point in the 80s. But we know that a lot have changed since then. You know, we're talking about a period of like 3 or 4 decades, especially with new challenges emerging from the use of technology that we have today. How do you think that this intergenerational, and perhaps maybe this does not hit on the text directly, but how do you think that these intergenerational challenges, you know, can, or differences, I don't want to use the word challenges, these intergenerational differences, how do you think they can be factored into deriving inspiration from these role models? I see that Karachi's hand is up, and I hope she can speak. Can you unmute yourself, or do I have to unmute you?
Yes, I can unmute myself.
Okay, great.
Thank you, and a very good evening to everyone. It's really been an amazing time just sitting here and listening to, obviously, Edem and Chimamanda, 2 amazing people, and of course the other authors who are here as well. Just before I get to your question, I actually had raised my hand to say that I loved the perspective that Mrs. Ossai Edem brought, because I'm also a children's author, but I had come from a completely different point of view than what she shared tonight, because I'd come from the fact that I would like to see African representation in traditional tales that children are used to, especially from the Nigerian context. So my book that I had written came from that angle. I'd like to see more traditional tales, but changed a little bit to fit the African context, so that when children read these books in Nigeria, Uganda, Ghana, they see themselves in those traditional, retells. But then she was coming from the fact that rather than looking back, how can we celebrate what we currently have? And how does that feed into the children of the future and how they will see this generation? So it's really very exciting. And I'm glad that authors, again, are thinking differently. And of course, she and the other author added the delicious nuance of it being an Ibadan coached experience. which again added another level of excitement and interest to what they had done. So I wanted to pop my hand up and just to say also to Chimamanda, good job, girl. I'm so proud with what she's doing publicly. I mean, it takes a lot. I don't know what I was doing at this age, at her age, to be able to speak publicly on this sort of platforms and to present myself in a very amazing, and very elusive, I don't even know what word to use, but really well presented, used the right words, very calm, collected, shared her thoughts, really well. So well done to you there, Chimamanda, for that. Now, getting to the question that was asked, which I wasn't particularly wanting to answer, but I think I have something to say about that. Also, I feel we need to remember that in as much as these people seem to have either, the people that we're writing about seem to either have been from the past generation or maybe from current generation, we should remember two things. First perspective I would like to think on is the fact that life is cyclical. It happens in cycles. So history will always repeat itself, right? And so people will always say, you don't know where you're going if you don't know where you're coming from. So it might look as if we might not be relating to the current generation in the face of AI, technology, and everything. But at the same time, life is very cyclical. We're going to go around this path again with experiences. It might look a little bit different, but the lessons and the mistakes and the villains and the heroes very likely repeat themselves in different contexts. So I feel it will still be very, very valid, a story to tell, even if you're reading this further down, especially in the world of AI. I'm also in education. That's why many times we have this debate about AI versus human experience. And what we're going to find is with the increase of AI, is almost like demand and supply. If there's an over supply of AI, people will start demanding human experiences. So which I feel will mean that these stories will not ever maybe go out of or ever be outdated, or ever be not valid or not useful. That's the first thing. Second thing is the idea of globalization. Everyone, we can no longer divide ourselves along the geographical lines and say this is Nigeria, that is the US, this is the UK. Those are literally maybe even the lines of our generation. This new generation, they've created for themselves completely different borderlines. For example, Instagram is bigger than many nations in the world, just that world of Instagram. So when you're thinking about the stories we're telling in the context of the new borders of a people, right? We can see again how valid it is and how much we're teaching the world of our own unique personal experiences. So if I look at it through these two lenses, I don't think there's ever a time that the stories that were being shared on this platform tonight will either not be valid or maybe not connect to the general, to the current generation or the future ones. Yeah, so that's what I wanted to share. Thank you so much for doing this. And I really enjoyed being a part of this program today.
Thank you very much. We look forward to having you share your own book on this platform at some point in the future. Mr. Ossai, if you permit me, let's have Mr. Bernard Fagba make his own comments.
Okay, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. I'm sorry I came in late. Work issues. Anyways, I think I heard Chimamanda and the other lady spoke before Chimamanda, just a few comments. Yeah, from where I got, beautiful piece, beautiful submissions, and great work. I think the problem that we have presently is still from the schools. I think if we do not start the teachings from the primary school, from primary school, we will keep having the issue of trying to get the history and this into the heads of the newer generation. Yeah, AI is there, but AI is basically what is being fed in. So I think we in the IT world, will keep working on getting these feeds into the AI system so that when it is being requested or when it's being queried, you get this information out there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Benga, they are not questions, so that's why you have to hold your thoughts, Ms. Ossai, until we
Okay.
Yeah,
I think this is the question now for her. Edem. So my question is looking at the work, is there any plan to make it into animation on YouTube for people to watch and all of that? Then also, is there like a plan to have like maybe create a dialogue session where you bring the older generation? Maybe not necessarily the people in this book, because I know that some of them dragging them, they have a schedule that's already planned till 2030. Alone Gozi cannot find that till 20 something like that. But maybe Wole Soyinka that's still a little bit stay around, all of that. Maybe just organize an event, a talking event with generational, bringing some of the old people, maybe not the people in the book, or some other people. Then people discuss. Then maybe pick one or two characters of in the book, and we'll talk about. Is there any plan to have like a road trip with it across the country, across the continent? Then I think the most important one that was in my mind is the issue of we planning to make like an animation on it, so we can have them on YouTube and all of that. Thank you.
Ms. Ossai.
Okay, I wasn't sure if you wanted to take any more questions. So first of all, thank you everyone. Thank you to all the aunties and uncles who I know are here for Chimamanda and not even me. So by the way, Miss Karachi is her mentor.
We're here for both of you. For both of you.
Okay, thank you for being here for me too. So interestingly, Miss Karachi, I didn't even know Miss Karachi is a children's author. I look forward to reading her book. She's mentored Chimamanda over the last couple of months, and I know she's so proud to witness Chimamanda's contribution today. We thank you for your, contribution to molding her. I'm sitting here as a very proud mom, obviously. So to the questions, I'll start with Gbenga's own, because I think it's somewhat even tied to your question, Dr. Olayokun, in terms of how do we, make these stories relevant, or how do we, strengthen the intergenerational ties between, ourselves and the younger ones, such that, these stories are passed down, more strongly, more richly, more robustly. Yes, we've planned all kinds of, tours and road book readings and all whatnot, but I don't think we've been very innovative in how we've approached the book readings. And so I think even this session has given me far more clarity on really how we should be approaching it. I realized that in my conversations with Chimamanda, and I think it's a tendency of every generation to sort of like, cast the older ones as, stuck in a mold, completely unrelatable. And this fracture occurs really because, number one, conversations are not happening very richly. When I was growing up, we grew up in the era of the Tales by Moonlight. So we grew up still within the culture where the older ones sat, even if it wasn't in the same setting of the Moonlight and the village, setting, but we still had interactions where older people were passing on old nuggets, nice anecdotes of growing up and all that. And I think for some reason, I don't know why our generation, the millennial generation, have not been as, active in that dialogue, in that continuity, in that cultural continuity, because for some reason, I don't know whether we really, we have a very, we have a lot of hostility for our backgrounds, either the small towns we grew up in or the small villages our parents forced us to visit. They have more nostalgic ties to their villages. When we were children, they would always take us for December holidays, or they'll find time every vacation to take their children, back home. For whatever reason, they really, it was clear that even though they built lives in cities and, places outside of the villages they grew up in, they held that, sentiment, that sentimental connection was still very rife, enough that they always wanted to go back to visit. They wanted their children to experience, to some extent, the layers of their childhood through a different, lens. For us, it's completely different. We've trained our children to abhor our villages. We've trained them to, to really dismiss, or to even worse, to really cast a very negative eye. I was chatting with Chimamanda the other day, and she said, oh, she was talking with a friend of hers was threatened that they will be sent back to Oshogbo. And she said, he screamed, there are no schools in Oshogbo. Oshogbo is dead. But I said, Oshogbo is a town now. Maybe it's not as, I mean, there are different towns, and towns have different levels of, utility and advancement. But she said, are there televisions in Oshogbo? I said, how are you looking at this Oshogbo? But somewhere, somehow, parents have formed that impression such that we threaten our children with hometowns. Our hometowns are now a place of threat, that I will punish you. So I don't know why that has come about. But also, we're not sitting down to pass on our childhood stories. We don't enjoy, maybe we really had trauma that we didn't resolve. That we've come into this new parenting with really traumatic tales or experiences of childhood that our children are not, we don't encourage curiosity in our children, or some notion that, hey, your childhood was so much fun, which is contrary to how we were taught by our parents to view their own childhood. I think that some of how we can resolve that is by better conversations. Even if, to Benga's point about how do you plan to do these book readings, will you bring in people from different generations? And I think that's critical, because there will be a lens my mother will be able to present to my daughter that I may not have. There may be, perspectives that she may add and to enrich the conversation. And I think that going forward as a society, we need to strengthen that more. We need to have these intergenerational dialogues over books like this that just bring everybody cracking their ribs about similar childhood experiences, or even remove childhood experiences, but ignited by the stories. So maybe reading about Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala being raised by her grandmother because her parents were away in grad school, and how as the firstborn, she had to wake up very early to go, do the chores, home chores, and prepare her younger ones for school, may spark other memories in different generations. For me, it might not obviously be stoking any firewood or going to a stream, but I'll be able to recall how I used to walk to school. Growing up in the University of Ibadan campus, it was safe to walk to school with my siblings. That's something that children today don't know, except you're in the public school. There's such a divide that, the public school versus private school divide, that even if you're in private school and your home is just, 2 meters from your school, you will still be chauffeur driven to your school. So maybe those things will make our stories more relatable. Maybe we'll find strands of commonality in our stories if we have more rich conversations. Obviously, formal settings have so broken down that they are not happening in family discussions anymore. So they need to be structured. And books like this can ignite or structure, have these structured conversations gravitate around the stories. So I think I want to use this book more as a utility for that, sort of connection to be fostered again, for those fractures to be healed between the generations. And to Ms. Karachi's point, it becomes even more critical, and to Mr. Bernard's point about the times in which we live, it becomes even more more pertinent that cultural versions and cultural narratives really find their way into mainstream, communities that are now defined by technology. As she rightly said, borders and communities should no longer be geographically perceived or, territorially perceived, but they exist. Instagram is way bigger than many nations, as she points out. TikTok is vast, and all the other, platforms. And so narratives that shape our understanding of who we are and enlighten others that we're relating with about our own selves are very critical, so that we're not strangers to each other and we don't foster new kinds of, supremacist-driven dominance and whatnot. So these are things that I believe this book does. Another critical thing is the valorization of childhood. A lot of these heroes, children encounter them when they're adults. Their characters are already mature, too mature for children to draw, lessons from. That's why I go back to the childhood of all of these individuals, exhuming their stories right from childhood. And it's very interesting for me to see how children interact with these stories. I've always been, intrigued by the fact that Chimamanda was very drawn to tragic themes in the story, death, sickness. And I realized that the things we take for granted really impact on children, loss. They may not express it, but a lot of their, children need stability. And when loss or death occurs in a child's life, it leaves a huge question unanswered for many of them. so I find that very interesting. I would love to hear from more children what resonated with them. But I know that these questions often arise in her mind when she's interacting with these stories. She's also very curious about villages. She also thinks that I lived in an era where there was no TV, that's the way she has, frozen me in time. And I'm like, how do I look like to this child? But that's the way we look. And also because we don't listen, we don't engage more. But if we listen and engage more and treat them as competent individuals with cognitive abilities to also shape conversations, we'll learn more from each other. In our parenting, authoritative parenting styles, oftentimes we're the ones dictating and we're not hearing so much. This book has allowed me hear from her in ways that I did not, I haven't experienced prior. And I think, stories like this help us hear better from children too. Their thoughts are able to frame around conversations like this.
Thank you very much. Ms. Omishore, whose hand was up, I don't know whether she wants to go again. The floor is open for everyone. Want to speak, please kindly signify by putting up your hand or typing in the chat box.
Hello,
Calls up.
everyone. Yeah. Hello, everyone. So, yeah, Mrs. Osai actually, she spoke to what I wanted to talk about the other time I was raising my hand. But I also just want to speak about something. I remember when I was reading Bolanle the Pioneer story, I remember there was a particular scenario where after they had moved down to Ibadan, Kikwadi to be precise, where they were talking about how practically Muslims, Catholics, Anglicans, African traditional worshippers were practicing and they were living in this unison. And the book, that particular scenario majorly shows a childhood environment where Christians, Muslims, and even African traditional worshippers lived peacefully. Because I remember reading the line where they were talking about this particular woman that would bring out her hair bow, her sacrifice item in a calabash, and the children in front of her house would not even run away from her or think of her as a weirdo or something. And I tried thinking about the current religious crisis in Nigeria as it stands, or let's say in other parts of the world. And my question really to Mrs. Osai would be that what lessons, or maybe to better put, how can books like that of the role model series for African children help rebuild this trust, this social trust in a country like Nigeria, where we are constantly facing this increased religious this crisis? Thank you.
Dr. Layaku, is it okay to come in now? Or I don't know if you want to take any.
No, I didn't see Chimamanda's hand up.
Sorry.
No, Chimamanda, yeah.
I just wanted to say that before I read this book, I used to hate reading. Reading was like a punishment for me. But after reading this book, I discovered the interesting world of reading and how fun it could be if I read more.
Okay, yeah. Thank you very much for sharing that. I hope people that are listening will also pick from that to say, to pick an interest in something, you just have to do it. I think we have some grandmas in the house. We've been talking about this intergenerational thing. And I'm saying, sorry, Mama Karen, I know there are two of you there. Would love to hear from you at some point if you decide to share with us from your wealth of wisdom. Yeah, okay, yeah. You can go ahead, ma.
Let me just say, I've lost my voice, so this doesn't sound like me, but yes, I'm a grandma and also very, very proud of Chimamanda. But I was taught to read by my mother, who's a long-serving teacher, very long, taught at ACA many, many years ago. So just saying hi. We're sorry that we came in late and we look forward to hearing the recording. But just, I'm so impressed with Chimamanda, being in 5th grade and being willing to publicly share with all of you. Chimamanda, so proud of you. Keep up the very excellent work. Very proud of your mom too. Mom, anything you want to say?
Well, I haven't heard the story yet, but I'm certainly looking forward to it, and I'm looking forward to meeting her as well.
Yeah, okay.
Congratulations,
Yeah.
Mom.
Thank you very much, Maz. We're grateful. All right, Edem, please. Yeah.
Thank you, Miss Karen. Thank you, Grandma. Thank you, for being here, even though you obviously need rest. I'm hoping you can catch that after the session. Anyways, to The question, I think, Kauta raises a very interesting question. I recall that when I sat with Professor Bonale Awe and she was sharing with me how Okikpadi, you could picture it, you could, like, it was so raw, it was so visual, you wanted to live in it. Like, it was a space that felt very welcoming. I would want to grow up in that kind of neighborhood. And I remember growing up also, the University of Ibadan campus was very diverse, not just culturally or from a national ethnic standpoint, but very global. And I remember growing up with Indians, with so many cultural, multicultural, groups and races. And every childhood is enriched by that kind of experience. Stories like this help us recognize that these tensions are alien to our forms of existence. They are, they're artificial divides, stoked by entrenched interests, vested powers who benefit one way or the other from fracturing us, from dividing us, and, from scattering the unity. They are not our default. I love this story because stories like this show in the mirror what our default is. Our default is to gravitate towards each other. I know that it's evolutionary. It's an evolutionary response when a person, encounters something strange, to be instantly suspicious or to experience either fear or judgment. But historically, Africans have shown a huge capacity to be welcoming to strangers. Our history, in fact, our victimization, whether through slave trade and colonization, springs from that impulse of welcoming hospitality. We welcome what is strange. We don't necessarily show a violent reaction to it. And our independence, pre-colonial, communal, expressions reflect that impulse to welcome strangers. Childhoods like what I depict in the story of Professor Bolanle Awe show that despite our ideological divides along religion, along ethnicity, along class, we have had a proclivity and a tendency to still live together and coexist harmoniously, mind you, not in the way in which we're coexisting today with such dysfunction. She told me how they used to go to school and they'll be passing calabashes, passing, sacrifices, what Ebo, that all of us have come to dread today and for some reason. But these things, these ritual sacrifices to the gods of African, traditional forms of worship, we're not a threat. We're not viewed as a threat. It's like going to India today that is clearly celebrated like a Hindu nation, and then, reacting every time you see these sacrifices. But we were taught to demonize ourselves. And I think that, yes, hidden in some of these cultural practices are, evil intentions. But to then tar all of these practices under one brush has done a huge disservice to us as a people, rather than, aiding us in any way. We've learned, therefore, not to ask questions, but to act on the basis of assumptions. We've learned to assume that any person that is acting differently from us automatically is evil, should be feared or judged. If you don't attend church with me on Sunday or Bible study, or you don't even attend my own kind of church, then there is something inherently wrong with you. And that does not help anybody. Rather, it kills critical thinking. It kills curiosity. We no longer converge around our cultural differences as forms of education, as ways to, I remember growing up, schools like International School Ibadan used to host soirees where people from different cultural and religious groups would just come and showcase. In my daughter's school today, they still do it. In American Christian Academy, they still do it, where different, racial groups, different, nationalities come on specific days to showcase elements of their culture. Many elements of these cultures, relate to their religious culture, forms of religious culture, even in an American school, in a Christian school rather. So that tells us that, whatever hegemony you seem, shapes us, we have to still make room for people who express, other ideas. And growth only comes when there's exchange, valuable exchange of these ideas, contest of ideas. So whether it's a contest of, and in a way, and also we experience fusion, we borrow from each other. We borrow in ways that enrich us, whether it's our dressing, our food, spices, our medicines, we borrow, we fuse, and it enriches us. So I think that more and more, these old stories need to be brought back to children, because even her shock, Carter's shock, is not unique to her. I experienced the same shock. My daughter experienced the same shock. When I told her that Professor Wole Soyinka is a syncretic, she was like, eh? Were his parents Christians? I said his father, interestingly, was a member of the clergy, was a cleric, was an Anglican, priest. He grew up in a parsonage, but for whatever reason, critical thinking allowed him to choose a different path. We may not agree with it, but we don't begin to crucify each other because we choose different paths, and a syncretic, because in the midst of his Christian tradition, his mother was still telling him stories about the Oros and the demons and and the Egungus, and they grew up. So for him, you couldn't, those superstitions crept into even Christian people, Holy Spirit believing Christians were still superstitious and fearful of masquerades, fearful of going to the market on certain days, because they recognized that other forces, spiritual forces, were equally at play. So for him, that, presented to him a syncretic worldview. And I think that, it doesn't diminish our faith, our Christian faith, to acknowledge that people, adhere to other beliefs. People embrace other worldviews. People embrace other, religious affinities. I think that it's a wonderful potpourri and bouquet that enriches all our lives when we can accommodate all of these differences. So we must tell these stories. That's the power of these narratives. When I visited Nepal and I went to, cultural temples that were places of divine worship. So I wanted a cultural excursion and I was going on tourism, but these were also sacred religious spaces. Will I now, throw away that opportunity to experience a culture because undergirding it is the belief in a certain God? That's how narrow-minded a lot of us are. And I think that we need to find that balance where we hold steadfast to our faith, but embrace a world where
Is this from me?
We can hear
Okay,
you. I think it's from Eden.
Okay, yeah. I think it's so interesting. We don't know. I'm seeing Mr. Ossai on the screen. You want to step in because I don't understand. Yeah, I would like to hear from you a bit, so that when she comes back, you can hand over the platform. You have something to share with us, because I also know that this is what you're passionate about in terms of perhaps from the business side of things, how to create models, how to make people be successful in their business ventures. So is there like an interconnection between what you do and these kinds of texts, being shared with Africans? Edem, just stay muted.
Thank you. That sounds like a interesting PhD. Well, I want to thank you everyone for coming. We really appreciate you. Thank you so much. Yeah, so it's I mean, there's always going to be diverse thinking. There's always going to be different thinking. Even in boardrooms, even when you want to make decisions at work, you have different kinds of thinking. In the room, and those thinking, when you converge them, you take what is good, then what is not great, and sometimes, from this person, if it's not great today, then tomorrow. Then tomorrow it may, it's also really great. And I think to the question around the tensions happening in Nigeria, I think one of the first things we oftentimes forget is who we are as a people and our identity, and understanding how when a group of people with entrenched interests want to pull us together. And that's what this book really does, is to help children identify where they are from. Somebody did say the other day, I was still having a conversation yesterday about how, there's fun There's excitement when we celebrate getting other passports, and it was a very interesting debate. But the question at the end of the day is, who are we as a people? And when someone takes your identity from you, then you become confused. You become your compass, your inner compass. Anybody who has a ring light, and I'm not calling names, can then begin to influence children, and children don't even know where they are from. They don't even have a sense of, that strong sense of identity. And that's where, conversations like this are very, very important in getting children, to understand pretty early that, this is who we are as a people. It's fine. People have always moved, by my faith. Abraham moved, like people have always moved. Miss Karachi. Yeah, so, but at the end of the day is in that beauty in our foundations, where we are from, despising, where we are from, and like like, oh my God, there's been an African way of doing business. We talked about back in the day how people would stop by somewhere, they would take something and put the money and they would leave. I had those stories, from my parents, but that came from the fact that if you did something, then there was a communal justice that will happen, right? But if we don't know these things, we don't have these stories, written, then we begin to denigrate where we are from, and we can't take the strong qualities of where we are from into where we are going, so these conversations are really, really critical, and I want to thank everyone, for listening to, these wonderful stories, and, buy the book, more important.
Yeah, very important. Edem, come back. Oh, where are you? Business side. Share your
I'm
network
here.
is good now.
Yes. Yes. What do you need
Okay,
me
yeah.
to? Okay.
No, but you were in the midst of talking about these
Okay.
challenges.
Okay. I didn't know that I
Conflict
had
and
been
stuff.
cut off, but I
Yeah.
think, to the point that we've all of us have really buttressed and shared is that, number one, we really can't go forward without acknowledging, our past. And there's an arrogance in every generation to disconnect from, or to assume that all problems are new. And so their solutions, are the first in time. Most generations, look with sometimes I remember during NSAS, there was a tendency for the Protestants on the field to say, our parents accepted it, we will not accept it. Those narratives are skewed, they're false, to suggest that, the generations before them were spineless. I see it even in narratives today on social media with respect to, so if generations were not taught about the civil rights movement and the efforts and contributions and sacrifices of great people like Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, there's a tendency for them to believe that, their new street efforts flooding the streets in response to what's this man's name? I can't breathe. Anyway, we all remember it. George Floyd, yes.
George Floyd.
You would find them believing that they were the first to ever, confront the state and confront these oppressive structures. I see that a lot in every generation, and it's in every cut across every field. Even in education, you find people attempting to solve new crises, whether it's foundational learning crisis or out of school crisis, disconnecting from old literature. Nobody is even doing literature reviews well enough anymore to identify what, heavy efforts have come up in the past. So connecting that to this discussion, I think that every generation must be taught about the sacrifices of the past. In fact, in our pledge, in our national pledge, we say that so that the sacrifices of our heroes past shall never be in vain. But we make nonsense of that pledge if we don't put forward proof or stories of those sacrifices. How will they, honor those sacrifices if they've never been taught those sacrifices? So much work has to go into curating the past, keeping it rich, keeping it in archives, and to bring us question about how appreciation of those cultural domains, a lot of appreciation of what narrative does to societies. I go into spaces and people say things like, look, if you're not studying physics, if you're not studying, computer science, if you're studying anthropology, you're wasting your time. And I react so viciously to those kinds of comments. It is such a narrow, very, 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 I don't want to use negative words, but it's such a flawed way of viewing any society. Our entire reality, in fact, all our inventions are shaped by cultural strands, culture and narrative. Our reality, our way of sense making is shaped by narrative. Narrative is just, those frames by which we view our past experiences that help us form a sense of identity, a sense of awareness and space, and a sense of future purpose. Without narrative, you can't even invent a new product, because it is narrative over time and rhetoric over time that lets you know gaps, that lets you know what people want, lets you know what the needs of the market are. So even in pure hardcore science, if the social sciences are removed from it and the humanities are missing, you will not have rich products. Stories are essential to every civilization, every human race. We must spread these stories. We have to let our children know how we came this far. What efforts, what sacrifices, what struggles, what challenges, what failures, what mistakes led us to this point. Not just so that they can, avoid them, but so that, they can innovate from those stories. So we have a huge duty on our shoulders. I'm just one torch bearer in a huge ecosystem. I've written the stories. I'm hoping that, just like people do in creative spaces, somebody will find a story that is of interest, whether real or fictional, and say, I want to build a movie out of this. But if one person, so in the context of Nigeria especially, we have to choose reforms in bite sizes so that you're not overwhelmed. I always tell people I've done what I can do. My gift is writing. My gift is gisting children. So I will do that. I will be happy to collaborate with people who are in other industries or other domains, who have skill sets, and also to connect with, people with resources, funding that will be able to, capitally fund projects like this. And this is why we must encourage. Academia also has to form friendships, and scholarship has to form ties with, in the investment world and the more capital driven world, so that they can channel monies to things like this. Now there's a disproportionate fixation on techs and startups, and not enough, there's not enough attention being given to, thank God Nigerian filmmaking is gaining attention, but filmmaking from the starting point of script writing. But what about filmmaking from the starting point of the National Museum, archives in the National Museum, or works that are in dusty shelves in university departments and faculties? How do we bring some of these things, back into, the machine from which we can now process movies, more books, animations, comics, and other digestible formats of information, TikTok, skits, whatever it is. So much can come. So we need to forge these partnerships. But the principle is that nobody builds by hating themselves, and stories help children love themselves better.
Thank you very much. I was about to stop you because I know that you can go on for the next. But I think I'm sorry. I'm thinking the name SN is unisex. So I don't know. SN, and I'm sorry. I don't want to misrepresent you. Yeah.
The name SN is unisex, yes, but I think there's some there's a Sienna one, there's a Sienna one. So I think there are
Okay.
some there are things that are different. So I'm a Sienna male. So I'm
Okay.
Chimamanda's uncle, Edem's brother.
Oh, thank you very much. Nice to have you here. Yeah, you can go on, please.
Okay, thank you first of all for being a perfect host. Thank you, Chibaba. I listened to your presentation and I was very proud. Like Madam Karachi said, she was very calm, very composed, and I particularly liked her perspective when it came to her own gains from the books. I mean, Eden pointed it out. She sometimes as parents, we normally don't give the children a chance. So we think it's about being authoritative and our But Chibaba saying that, oh, she was particularly touched about the sickness of Kanu and the death that that was experienced in the book for Wole Soyinka. It was quite touching because sometimes we don't take notes that loss also is a big factor for children, especially very young children. We think they don't really know or feel anything. So that was a very good learning for me as a parent. Edem, thank you for the books. You've opened the door. So when you say, oh, you've done your bit, I don't think you finished. You just started. So, don't tell us that you've done your bit. You've just started. So we're hoping we'll see more books. And this is particularly exciting because, like Edem said, it's scary now in Nigeria that I don't think the children are really in touch with what happened even before our own time or before our generation. And I'm talking about the kids today. The amount of material out there. So we have a lot of, tech is everywhere now. And all these children are more interested in content, technology, and nobody really goes back to what our history is like. So it's a good thing to see books like this, and books that makes it so simple, that has simplified the lives of these role models, heroes, whichever way you want to put it. It's so good to have books like that, easy to read, and make this larger than life personality so easy to understand, and makes it look like, look, as a child, you are actually able to attain this. It's not impossible. So I think that's something that we should say thank you to Edem for, and hopefully she would, there are other people out there, a lot of other people out there. Hopefully you have the opportunity to even release books on all these other individuals, because I think it will go a long way to helping our children of this present age keep in touch with the history of with our history. You mentioned very, very importantly the heroes like Malcolm X and some heroes out there, black heroes, and it will interest you to know that some of these children know these heroes who are not even within the borders of Nigeria, but don't know our own heroes, and it's sad. So if we have books like this that can help them relate and also learn, I think it's a welcome development. So thank you, Edem, and thank you, Chimamanda. Hopefully, Edem will say a lot more books on other top personalities within the Nigerian space. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Anda, for your very wonderful comments. We can take one or two more comments if there's anyone that wants to speak up. Our time is almost up. Okay, Duke Olurin, please. Mr. Duke, you have to be a male this time, yeah.
Hey, yes, good afternoon, good evening. Sorry I can't put my camera on. I just wanted to thank Madam Edem for sending this invite out, and thank you, Chimamanda, for your comments and your honest comments and how you did not like books before, but after this series, you love books. I just want to shout out to the parents, so your parents for doing a wonderful job in really raising you with the freedom of mind and speech to express yourself. Like everyone's comments that have been shared today, I think it's great what they are doing. And I can tell that many of your peers and many of your other children would benefit from this. I actually have been inspired to continue my work in the childhood space. I'm looking forward to our Coffee Connect, Madam Edem. Hopefully we'll do that after this, but this is exciting. I look forward to the future of our children. And I most importantly love the fact that these books can be touched, because these days everything is going to digital. And I grew up on physical books and I love physical books. So I think we can bring that back. And I think, it's not, don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with digital copies, but it's something about the physical copies. So thank you so much for continuing that. I yield. Oh, and it was good to see Madam Karen as well.
Oh, okay, good. Mr. Oni. Mr. Benga.
No. Yeah. No, I was trying to process the question in my head. Maybe I should, when I say Edem in person. But I think the more you talked, when Edem was talking and when she was speaking and others were also sharing, especially in terms of challenging the next generation. Because for me, I think it's always ick me when, like you said, when these people say, our old people are, me, I don't even go to some social media platform because I want to live long. And so they don't say a lot of things about the older people, as if they're the most wisest than the people and all of that. But I just think this is an opportunity from what you've just written now I think it's an opportunity for us to start a discourse and all of that. But the question I wanted to ask, which I think I'll follow up some of them with you when we see in person the next month, is that is there a website for, because I see this book as a movement. The more you keep speaking, the more I just feel that, yes, like you said, you've written it, but I see it's like a fire that needs to, it looks simple and all of that, but I think it's a fire that can set up a lot of conversation within the country. So the question I wanted to ask was that, is there a website for this book? I know you've been going to different podcasts and all of that, but are you also planning? I know me, it's just every time strategic thinking, but sorry. Is there like, okay, I say, okay, is there like a podcast for it? And is there like maybe having a conversation, you yourself, not just people inviting you to podcast? Do you want to do a podcast on this Nigerian series and just bring it up? Because I think it's really, 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 really important for us to have this digital footprint for it. But I think our wife has raised up her hand. Let me give it to Her Excellency, because I think she's not spoken, so she can say something. So, moderators, I yield back my time. I'll continue with Idem when I see her.
Thank you, sir. We have Ore Banton, Mr. or Mrs. or Miss or Mrs. I'm sorry. Yeah, these are very beautiful and wonderful names. It's good actually in terms of learning how identities can, be complex when trying to derive them from names. All right, sir, you have the floor. Sorry for talking too long. You have the floor.
It's okay. Good evening, everyone. It's nice to be here. Unfortunately, I didn't hear. I missed Chimamanda's presentation, but I have no doubt that she did so well. I remember the first time that I visited the Ossai family in their house, and I saw their very big library of books. I joked with Emeka. I said, if you guys have this many books with how very intelligent both of you are, then there's a very big possibility that Chimamanda might be president, someday. So I am not surprised. So I want to say a very big well done to Edem. I was at your book launch. I was privileged to anchor the event, and it was fantastic. Well done. I also work with children in my own little space, and the things that I hear them talk about, the things that we discuss, their challenges that cut across, different kinds of things and different kinds of sectors, and their challenges in this modern society, tells us that there are loads of things that are missing, from before up until now, this generation, the continuity that we need, isn't there. And I think this is what the book will bring, continuity, the wisdom of old that the children do not feel that is important now, because like somebody was talking about, the age of tech, everybody is just interested in tech, everybody is interested in all the things that are modern, but they forget the culture, they forget this, the importance of culture, importance of our history. I remember some time ago, I don't know if they've brought it back now, history was cancelled in schools in Nigeria generally, and I wondered why. I don't know if they've brought it back now, but if you cancel history in the curriculum, then how do we identify ourselves? How do the modern children identify themselves? How do they understand who they are? How do they understand who those who have come before them, their heroes? The
Oh, I think
fans among the other the previous generations having success. I think it's very important. This book. So I think it's very important that this book came into light, and I believe that this book will challenge a whole lot when it comes to, culture and understanding identities, especially the young children. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Mr. Bassi.
Can I take your pen? Hi.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, it's not Mr., it's Mrs.
Oh, so this time I decided to be. Oh, I apologize, Mrs. Bas. Oh, it's
It's
very
okay.
bad to do. All right, thank you.
It's a unisex name as well. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm Basi Abidoye. I am Edem's cousin, and I'm happy that she could do this book. And it's interesting when I saw the copy of it, I was like, this is brilliant. Chamanda's speech was excellent too. I love her honesty. And I don't think she should beat herself about it because she's still young. So she has developed the interest just at the right time. And well done, Edem, for thinking about this and bringing it into existence. Maybe that's not the right word to say, but making it happen. I hope it builds like the conversations you were saying that we should have with kids and everything. We had it growing up, and I feel sometimes it's life. When you're busy doing other things, it makes you forget that you should do that, or doesn't give you the opportunity to do it, even if you want to. And like when you were saying the Oshobo, somebody saying something about going to Oshobo, I was like, what? I used to go to Oshogo for my holiday. It's for me. You can't make me think that that is a bad thing. And you're right. We should make children relate with where we are, whichever part of the world you're in. You might think Nigeria is not a very nice place, but that's not necessarily the case. Everywhere has its advantage and disadvantage. So wherever you find yourself in, you make your children know the good and the bad of the place, and just make them know that they should build themselves for the future. Thank you that this has happened, and may it make things better for the future of our country, anywhere that we find us home. Thank you.
Amen. Thank you, ma'am. Mrs. Awaliman.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Hawel Liman, and I'm Chimamanda's auntie. I'm so happy. I just want to commend my brother and my sister for doing this great together. And like the other speaker mentioned, I'm not surprised visiting their house. The books I saw, I was like, I can imagine what Chimamanda and her siblings are going to grow into. And not only that, experiencing the both of them, as the first couple to, set to be Mandela Washington Fellows, both husband and wife. So I'm not surprised with what I'm seeing, but I'm just here to congratulate them and also beg. We want Chimamanda to form a club for our children. They need mentors like her, please. So I hope this request will be granted. Thank you very much, and congratulations, Edem. This really timely is what's needed, and I also agree with what my brother said, Benga. It's something that please let's take it out there. Let's see how all of us can key in and contribute and start this movement. It's truly timely and it's what's needed. Thank you very much, and congratulations.
Thank you very much, ma'am. I think our time is fast spent. We were actually supposed to stop at 4, but we didn't start early anyway, so it's fine. I think you all will agree with me that we should give Chimamanda the opportunity to also give a last word. I hope that's not going to be too much pressure. But Chimamanda, everybody is here for you. Some people missed your presentation, and they would love to just hear your voice on this platform. So would like to hear from you anything that you want to share with us. Please do not feel pressured. Yeah, but a lot of people are here on this platform because of you, and they've also asked that you start a club for children. Is that something you want to take on? Yeah, I'm muted. Okay.
Okay, I just want to say thank you to my parents for teaching me everything that I know. It's a very great opportunity to be able to do this. Many children my age don't really get to do this. And I'd like to encourage you to buy the book. It will be very educational for your children. Thank you.
No, you've not answered the one on the club for children. Is it
That was
something
the
that
parents
you?
that will answer that one and not her.
No.
Just to take consent from them now.
Chimamanda, is this something you would love to have a club that kids will belong to? Perhaps a book club or maybe a social club, you know?
Yes, I would love to. I'd
Okay.
love to have maybe like a little fun club on Saturdays.
Okay. So be assured that we're going to support you in whatever way you need us. Everybody on this platform has committed because they are pushing it to it. So we're going to support you and make sure that you realize it, you know, as soon as you want to get it started. Okay. We also, as is usual, we also have to have one last word from one of our panelists, Kauta. No, don't type. You have to give us your last word. Then we'll go back to Edem and we'll wrap up. Miss Omishori, are you still there?
Yes, I am.
Yeah,
I
one
mean,
last
it's
word
been
from you.
all right. It's been wonderful listening to so and practically everyone has spoken to what the book, the Role Model Series for African Children is about, and the need for us to make sure that it is not just watch everyone for joining this. Sorry, can we hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now. We lost you for it. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So yeah, I was saying that, I mean, like practically everyone here has spoken about the book, why it is important for us to introduce it to schools, communities, neighborhood. And I mean, I personally appreciate how the book traces each role model from childhood, which is very important for us to know where we are from and for also to show the possibility of dreaming and how possible it is to actually achieve whatever it is you want to achieve from reading the stories of the role models that were spotlighted. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining this session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Miss Omishori. Mrs. Ossai, your last word so that we'll wrap up. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Olayoku, for inviting me on this platform. It has been very enlightening to also see, you know, how this ties to peace, transnational justice, transitional justice, conflict resolution. I wasn't obviously thinking in that light when I wrote it, but I'm happy to see all of these dimensions even springing out. Thank you for the great ideas that all the contributors to today's discussion have brought on the table. I think it has bolstered my energy. Sometimes life happens, you get tired, even though you have a goal in front of you. Having a community like this and rich conversations like this helps to keep me accountable to my goals and also to, you know, strengthen my resolve and my commitment. I'm excited now. I'm even more excited to delve into volume 2. Volume 2 is looking at, I won't reveal it, but you know, I'm excited now. I'm when I look at the cover pages of volume 1, I'm already envisioning the different characters in volume 2 sitting down and staring back at the children. So I think out of today's meeting, I have a new spark of energy. I have, you know, a sense that this is truly an important, this meeting also serves for me as a good feedback mechanism because it helped me know, not just from an adult lens, but from a child's lens, that this book has truly been important. As a parent who's always emphasized the importance of reading, I'm happy to see Chimamanda by herself evolving into a reader. I'm also happy to have heard different, you know, feedback from children around Nigeria about how they enjoyed reading it. I would love to hear more children. If you get copies, if you run a school, if you have children in your community, I'd like to encourage us to introduce these books to them, help support by buying copies and distributing this Christmas to as many children around us as possible so that the mission behind the books is achieved. We need more and more. I have copies staring at me now and they're doing nothing for me. They need to be in the hands of children. So if we could also commit to that really practical goal of helping to distribute these books and get them to the reader, the end reader, I would really appreciate that. I'll think a lot and reflect a lot about the ideas that have come up. I'm looking forward to when Mr. Gbenga will come to Ibadan. I think he'll be a great, you know, strategist to help me define my 2026 goals around disseminating and sharing the book. But I really, truly appreciate today's conversation. It's enriched me in many ways as a writer for children. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Ossai. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for this edition of our Author Spotlight event. It's really been very amazing, Also, a unique edition to have Chimamanda grace our platform and share with us the profound thoughts from a child's perspective, which I think all of us have benefited from. We wish you the very best for the rest of the day, wherever you are in the part of the world.
Sorry, can I just also thank all my family members who came in? Thank you. Sorry, I needed to just say that. They're connected from all over the world. And my friends, Chimamanda's aunties and uncles, thank you very much. Uncle Ore, Uncle Benga, Auntie Hawa, all of you, Miss Karachi, even my pastor, my pastor's wife, Auntie AJ is here. Like everybody, all your support. You're the community that makes us stand. And I just wanted to appreciate you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much to the community. Thank you very much to our own community as well. People who have been steadfast with us. We're grateful and we look forward to having you during the subsequent editions of our events. So bye from here for now and enjoy the rest of your day.
Bye, everyone. Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, the host, too. Thank you, Mr. Philip.
Thank you. Bye.